Welcome into the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. We're here to break down UFC 296, the final podcast of this year, final UFC fight card of this year. Of course, we have got two title fights, a welterweight title fight, and of course, we got the flyweight title fight, which is a rematch from a matchup that took place back in 2021. We appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the podcast. We appreciate you tuning in to check out the show here. Of course, we're going to break it all down for you. Pete, how's it going, man?
What's going on? Kind of sad when you say it in that sense of where it's just like the end of MMA for 2023. We've had a great year. It's been fun. Lots of chaotic events, lots of crazy outcomes in fights. Some sloppy fight cards, but all in all, like the fighters stepped up as they always do. So happy to end the year on a good note with a very solid card. Would have been a lot better without the cancellations. Obviously, losing Rainey Brown, Muslim Salikov, losing Ian Gary, Vicente Luque. Just two fights that I was looking forward to.
Yeah, especially that price point of Vicente Luque was really sticking out to me. But, of course, we lost that matchup. Of course, yesterday we lose Randy Brown, Muslim Salikov, and so we'll see what happens here. Of course, we got our DraftKings contest. The contest is already live. Link is in the description below. Congratulations to Coach S111 taking it down contest last week, 558 points. P105 coming down in second. Dog 74 coming down there in third place over there. Coach's lineup had Song Yadong, Anthony Smith. Of course, I said this on my podcast last night, Pete. I want to give a lot of kudos to Khalil Roundtree Jr. because there's a lot of fighters that probably would have gone in there for those couple extra kill shots, but he did not do that, so you got to give him kudos there. Then he had Hopperos. He did have Sumandarju, who got the whopping 4 points there. Song Kanan with 30 points. Or excuse me, that was my line. Excuse me, Tara with 101 points. Let me pull over Coach's lineup. DraftKings.
I was gonna say, bro, like how do you win with that lineup?
Song Yadong, Tim Elliott, Muniz, kudos to Muniz, 7,400 there, and of course Steve Garcia. We talked about that last week being a punt play. Tara and Amanda, who was the one loser that Coach had in his lineup there. So congratulations there. Hop in that contest for this week's contest for UFC 296. Of course, be sure to hop in that Discord channel. Totally free to join. Great conversation we have over there. Pete, let's get right into game theory. And as I look at this fight card come up here tomorrow night in Las Vegas, as I look at some of the things I've kind of colored. By the way, I'll tell you this. Don't really have a lot of great leans over on PrizePicks this week. There's only 3 plays on PrizePicks I like this week. So we'll talk about that as those fights go on. But to me, where it starts is the main event, co-main event. I think you have to prioritize both of these matchups, and I think prioritizing them in 2 different ways. I think that the reality is the main event likely is going to hit the championship rounds, probably goes all 25 minutes, most likely. Co-main event, I think, is a little bit of a different story. I don't think that fight's probably hitting round 3, unless we see maybe a totally different mindset from Brandon Royval. I mean, this is a guy, he's a wild man in there, and he's going to take chances. He's going to fight with chaos. So to me, that is where it starts for me, is prioritizing the main event, co-main event.
Yeah, I think that's basic roster construction, is just the 8,200, 8,000 fight always sneaks into the optimal lineup more often than not, and then you attach 5 rounds to it. So with a lot on the line between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington, I think it's a great starting point, and a very unique pivot. If you're bold enough to do so, I'm not necessarily bold enough to do so because I do think the winner score is pretty high. You have a pace pusher in Colby Covington priced at 8,000, so it's an excellent underdog, selection as far as just like a slight underdog at a very reasonable price tag. And on the other side, we have Leon Edwards, the champ, at 8,200. So not often do you get, such ramifications at such a discount for DFS. So that's a nice starting point. Co-main event's interesting, right? Because you could see that swing in a multiple different ways. So it's like, we saw in the first matchup between Brandon Royval and Alexandre Pantoja, where like Brandon Royval is just dangerous against everybody. I don't think that he lets his opponents get comfortable at all. He constantly throws high volume. He throws sneaky, dangerous techniques. Like he'll throw a lead knee a lot, has excellent work with his elbows, pretty big for the division. And then you did see Pantoja tire early in that first bout, but then he's overcame the adversity and put it on Brandon Royval. And I actually think like that's just what we've seen from Brandon Royval, is where like there's leaks in his game. He's so dangerous, and I would kind of circle his name and put volatile, but with volatility comes upside and massive ceiling. So like he's a guy that could break the slate. And if a lot of ownership isn't getting attached to him, I have no problem getting there. Alexandre Pantoja hasn't been finished, but like, you know what I mean? It's very hard to not get finished in the sport of MMA, especially the longer you stay in the sport, and especially with all these high-profile fights. So you're talking about the next hungry guy in Brandon Royval, who has submission skills and striking skills. I mean, you know, it's like, look at Kamaru Usman's reign, and then, you know, Leon Edwards lands that head kick, and then, you know what I mean? So it can happen. It can definitely happen. So I'm going to be aggressive with both the main event and co-main event. If you are really, really bold and you fade one, maybe two of those fights, you have to hit those fights correctly, obviously, and you have to have the correct combination. Just need 6 fighters over 100. But I tend to think that the ownership's correct in targeting the main and co-main event.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at, and I want to see where this Royval ownership goes. I think that is, whether we're talking about on DraftKings or FanDuel, that price point of FanDuel on Brandon Royval really sticks out to me. And I got to think a lot of people, they're looking to find some salary savers over on FanDuel, looking at that 13 and under Brandon Royval is definitely going to stick out to you. And I'll say this, you know, because obviously we've lost 2 fights this week, stacking the main event is something I'm not against doing this week. My general thought is, if you're stacking the main event, I think the thought has got to be is that Colby Covington's going to rack up rounds early on in this matchup, roll up the takedowns, roll on with that pace, and then Leon Edwards knocks him out in the 4th or 5th round. To me, if you're going to stack, that's kind of the mentality to potentially have there. And then there's some fights that I look at, you know, Paddy, Pimblett, Tony Ferguson. I mean, I do not know what to expect out of that one, but I think to me that is a fight that I kind of have circled. And, you know, a fight that to me could potentially be a ownership leverage play this week as we sit here right now on a Friday just after 2 o'clock Eastern time is that Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett matchup. I think the Bryce Mitchell ownership should probably be a little higher than what it is. I was mentioning this to Pete earlier. I think when you talk about GPP dart throws, Alonzo Menifield to me is, when I look at that 7,300 and below, and I'm looking at Brian Kelleher, Alonzo Menifield, Josh Emmett, Tony Ferguson, and Stephen Thompson. If I'm looking for a dart throw, Alonzo Menifield, I would rank number 1 out of those fighters.
It pains me to say because I'm just not sold, but like with his power, you have to kind of be a believer, right? Like you have to be a believer. There's a fighter, you know, if you say 71 and under, I agree. If you like 7,200, Brian Kelleher is very interesting for me. Just $100 spend up. But like as far as Menifield and below, I think the power and also the win streak that he's been on, just that there's something to be said. Like the wars he had with Jimmy Crute, and then just how he adjusted his style and was able to finish Jimmy Crute, who's a fighter that I think was a massive prospect, and has shown to, you know, to kind of succumb to big power and guys that just stay in it and don't quit. And Alonzo Menifield being what I used to think was, you know, kind of like a round 1 guy and only. He's proven me wrong. And this is a nice matchup, a striking matchup. I do think that the kickboxing skills of Dustin Jacoby should be on full display. But like one shot, we've seen Dustin Jacoby get dropped numerous times in the octagon, and then you start to take into account all the damage from kickboxing over into MMA as well. You know, it is a good spot as far as a dart throw for Alonzo Menifield. And it seems like Jacoby, if he doesn't finish it quickly, like his fights tend to be a lot closer than they should be for a guy with his kickboxing pedigree. So I don't hate the call at all. Personally, I'm on Dustin Jacoby to kind of out kickbox and maneuver Alonzo Menifield, but I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, the price point, I think, was more of what kind of surprised me more than anything else in that one. I remember it was just kind of like when I initially saw the Bryce Mitchell and Josh Emmett, betting line plus price point. I was like, wow, it's one of those things that you initially see it, but then you start kind of really taking a deep dive in the card. Say, okay, I see why the price point is that way. Of course, we appreciate everyone tuning in here to the Fight HQ podcast. A great way to show your support for the channel. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed to the channel. And of course, if you're listening to us on the podcasting platform, platforms. Give us that 5-star rating and review would be much appreciated. Pete, let's get right into this main event. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Colby Covington is a plus 135 betting underdog, minus 160 for Leon Edwards over on DraftKings. 8,200 for Leon, 8,000 for Colby Covington, 20 and 18 respectively over there on FanDuel. Pete, what's your thoughts, man?
I've been going back and forth all week, admittedly. I really have. I just don't necessarily know how I'm going to lean. I really don't. As far as like DFS, I think that they're both tremendous values. I think the better value is clearly on the wrestler because DraftKings, leans towards heavy grapplers and guys that can get takedowns and, octagon control and all that. And that's definitely Colby Covington, pace pusher. For a long time, a big joke was British wrestling. And like if you had American wrestlers going up against British fighters, that's something that you could target and it could really expose the deficiency within that game and within that just region of mixed martial arts. Like for a while, it's something that we've always been able to kind of take advantage of. And I think that like Colby Covington's absence from the cage is what makes this very, very interesting because I don't know if he's lost a step. I also don't know if, he's going to be the same fighter, high volume, high striking. I do worry about his chin, and I worry about some of the things he says to kind of wake up a beast in Leon Edwards. Like if I was poking holes at Leon Edwards throughout this fight in comparison to Colby Covington, it's can he match the pace and volume of Colby? I really don't think so unless he's pissed off. And I feel like, Colby Covington did everything wrong to piss him off. And rightfully so. I hope Leon Edwards knocks Colby Covington clear out like bad. And I think the rear knee from Leon Edwards could be a weapon here. I think, with them both being southpaws, I think that you could see, Leon Edwards go out there and just wreck that calf of Colby Covington. Lots of calf kicks, which will definitely neutralize the takedowns a little bit and make him somewhat of a sitting target for some of these strikes. And I hope Rocky Edwards goes out there and knocks him down. But we've seen Colby Covington, deal with adversity and come back and, put it to Kamaru Usman and other fighters that are just, unwilling to put him away. I think that this is a very intriguing matchup. I do, because of the cage time and because of some of the striking sequences that I do see, I am going to slightly lean towards Leon Edwards. But as far as DFS, I don't really care who I get. I will stack in some of the fights, in some of my lineups, just because I do think that this is a nice spot to do so. You're getting two mid-range fighters that need to really just score 60 and above, 70 and above, with the winner, hopefully getting 90 to 100. But yeah, I'm going to slightly lean towards Leon Edwards, despite like weeks ago and months ago, me initially thinking that I was going to be picking Colby Covington. Just slightly worried about the inactivity and the adjustments and the camps leading up to this fight for Leon Edwards could possibly prepare Edwards for a good masterpiece against Colby Covington.
Yeah, when you talk about that inactivity of Colby Covington, this is only his fourth fight since 2020, first fight in 21 months. And from a fight aspect, obviously, I think it's weighing this aspect of, and I talk about this all the time, Father Time is undefeated. At some point, Father Time is going to hit you at some point. Colby Covington is 35 years old, and how much of this inactivity over the last 3 years is more about the wear and tear of his body, being a competitor for as long as he's been, going back to his amateur wrestling days and to now. When you look at what happened yesterday, it's going to be did he wake up somebody that he shouldn't have done? Like, look, when it comes to trash talking, there's two things to me that are off limits: family and religion. And what happened last night, Pete, Colby Covington's a piece of shit. I'm sorry. He's a piece of shit. Agree. I mean, I don't matter. It does not matter what happened there. You're talking about a man's father who, I mean, look, there's reports out there that he was not a good person, but you're talking about his father who was murdered, about you joining him in hell. I'm sorry. I've had a lot of people in South Florida scene tell me a lot of things about Colby Covington. that just once again proved this guy will say anything. There's media people in this industry that give Colby Covington these one-on-one interviews. They give him a platform to spew his rhetoric. And from an aspect, I hope he gets knocked the fuck out tomorrow night. I really do.
I love it. I've never seen Jason fired up like this, and I love it. And I know Jason really well, and he's always level-headed. But there's certain things that are just completely off the table. I mean, like, there should be lines that you don't cross, and he's willing to do anything to make $1. Oh, I'm just trying to sell it. Like, yeah, okay, but like, that's crazy. Like, have some anything except get involved in saying these terrible things. So, like, I really hope Leon Edwards looked really, really upset, and Colby Covington continued to call him the ultimate feelings champion because, like, you know, dude, it struck a nerve, and it should have, because that's very, very low. But they still have to fight. So Colby can say whatever he wants, but I do think that when you have something like that, it could make Leon Edwards fight a little bit more emotional, which is probably Colby's go-to, and hopes that it opens up some holes in Edwards' game. But I also think that it could really just make him rise to the occasion, and I really hope that Leon Edwards knocks him out bad. And what we see and still.
The thing is, when you look at the fighting aspect, if we see the Colby Covington we have seen, my one concern will be is how does Leon Edwards handle the pace of Colby Covington?
Yeah.
I think he's going to be able to stop some Covington takedowns, but it's going to keep coming. It's going to keep coming. It's going to keep coming. And this is the one thing about Colby Covington. There's no doubt in my mind he's one of the best welterweights in the world. But when you look at that resume, you got to go deep down and find someone he's beaten that's actually still in the UFC.
Agree. It's I'm glad you said that, because he's beaten a lot of great names, but a lot of those great names were at the end of their career, or their best days have been gone. Like, the Tyron Woodley, when everything was great timing. Like, everything was great timing, and you still have to go in there and win these fights, which is really difficult to do so. Colby's an excellent fighter. He really is. And I think, like, his striking somewhat underappreciated too, because he's not afraid to throw combinations, because he knows it's going to open you up for wrestling and takedowns. That's why, me as a coach, if I am in Leon Edwards' corner, what we're doing is you can't kick to the liver because of these same stances of them both being southpaws. You can't really kick to the head on that side. But what you can do is you can butcher that lead leg, and you can't be throwing leg kicks to the thigh, because that's a blast double waiting to happen. If I'm in part of Edwards' camp, we are destroying the calf. And let's see if his coach, he has a great team behind him. Let's see if they do that. Go out there and destroy the calf of Colby Covington, which will somewhat neutralize the wrestling and make him attempt takedowns on his bad side. And then when you talk about that, now the explosiveness is somewhat zapped. And that's why when you start burying that calf kick, he's going to start reaching. And that's when I think a knee up the middle is the way to knock Colby Covington completely out. I think a knee up the middle puts him, as he said, to hell. And I hope so. I really hope Colby Covington gets planted.
Yeah, I mean, I will say this from a DFS perspective. The concern I do have on the Leon Edwards aspect is potentially a lack of volume, which we have seen from him in the past. That would be a concern for me. That's why, like I talked about earlier, if you are looking to stack a fight, and obviously because of salaries here, it makes it very easy to stack this matchup, I think your mindset's got to be is Colby Covington gets up, say 2-1, 3-0 after 3 rounds, and then Leon Edwards takes over and eventually gets a stoppage in the 4th or 5th round. But I mean, look, I think you got to get to both sides of the equation in this one. Next up, we've got the flyweight rematch. Pantoja defending his title against Royval. Of course, the initial matchup took place back in 2021. Pantoja winning via second round submission. Pantoja is the betting favorite minus 195 plus 165 for Royval. Royval is 7,600 on DK, 12 on FanDuel, and for Pantoja, he's 8,600 on DK and $21 on FanDuel. Pete.
Yeah, this is an amazing matchup. It really is. You got a pretty big flyweight in Brandon Royval, 5'9", 68-inch reach. Pantoja's 5'5", 67-inch reach. Southpaw orthodox. But you'll see Royval switch, and he is just very dangerous because of his length. So lots of straight shots, throws punches from weird angles, spins when he's getting his back taken. He throws spinning elbows, which is a concern, right? Because if you're so spin happy, you are susceptible to getting your back taken and choked out. We've seen it happen. But he's willing to risk it. And some fighters are just not willing to risk it. And it's like, if you're unwilling to risk it, sometimes you don't give yourself a chance. This guy just goes out there and he trusts his skills in every area that, like, he's live. He's so live. And I can't wait to see an ownership update, because if Royval is being completely, just glossed over and people aren't getting to him, I'm going to smash it. I do think that the rightful favorite is Alexandre Pantoja. You're talking about a guy who has not been finished in the UFC. Nobody's been able to do it. And he's always been able to withstand adversity, come from behind. He's so talented on the ground. He does have the better jiu-jitsu, but Royval is he's a scrambling type of fighter. He will threaten the neck. Just because you are a better jiu-jitsu practitioner does not mean you can't get caught in a submission. And that being caught in that submission could lead to a bad position. Like, Royval attempts a guillotine off of a Alexandre Pantoja shot, and Pantoja realizes it's super deep. He gets out of it, but he rolls. So now Royval's in full mount, which leads to ground and pound in a bad position. Like, anything like that can happen just because of Royval's well-roundedness, and also the fact that, like, it's a high-paced division. So flyweights, similar to women's MMA, I think that the underdogs have a significant chance to pull off the victory, because the KO chance is rare, but the activity. The issue is, like, can Royval win a decision? Let's say this gets stretched out. Can he win a decision? I don't know. I kind of feel like he needs a finish over Alexandre Pantoja, which is kind of ironic because he hasn't been finished in the UFC. I think the better fighter over 25 minutes will be Alexandre Pantoja, coming from a super camp at American Top Team. I still will back the guy from American Top Team because I know how they prepare. I've trained with them, and they've even developed into a better team since when I was down there. So yeah, I think that Alexandre Pantoja showed that he can withstand the adversity and the danger that Royval presents. But I'm still worried. Like, I can't say, like, if I had to lock in the main event or co-main event, I really don't know who I decide, because, like, Alexandre Pantoja seems to be the chalk that everybody's so confident in. And I would just say buyer beware, just because Royval's very hungry and very dangerous. I think that Pantoja should win this fight, but I can also see this title bouncing around between multiple hands for the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I mean, it's one of those things, like, Royval, to me, it's like a boom bust type play. And
agree.
And the other aspect of is, like, let's say this fight hits a third, fourth, fifth round. We've only seen Royval he's only gone out of the second round one time in his UFC run. So what does he look like in terms of that? I mean, I do like the potential takedown upside of Pantoja in this one, and just trying to put Brand Royval on his back. I mean, like, but, like, when I look at that ownership projection on Pantoja, it's like, damn, like, I was just saw on the DK app because I wanted to see if they had put the salaries out for the captain contest. Like, I might throw Royval in as captain as just a under the radar captain play.
Yeah, I don't hate it at all. I mean, like, you want to find an underdog with tremendous upside, and I think, like, I think that Royval, similar to Colby Covington, of just how, like, as an underdog that switches their stances so often, like, he's not rooted. They have him on paper as they have Colby Covington as an orthodox fighter, they have Brandon Royval as a southpaw, but they switch their stances and they kind of mix and match based on their combinations and openings. I think it just gives their opponents so many different looks that it makes them so dangerous. And that's the issue here. And I don't hate the call at all. Brandon Royval as a complete, put him in the captain contest, because like, if he wins, it's probably pretty high score. But obviously, like, Alexandre Pantoja's damn good against Brandon Moreno, damn good in his whole reign in the UFC. So it's a very tough test for Royval to go. And if he does, he's absolutely legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, and I think when you're talking about these bigger GPP contests, it's about looking at projections and looking at fighters who are going to be that 15% and below and say, okay, who has that high GPP upside? And Brand Royval, to me, is one of those guys that has that high GPP upside. That's why he's someone that I'm going to circle as when I'm developing lineups, tonight and tomorrow morning before I get, head up to the north, is sitting there going, okay, if I'm not max entering a contest, I got to start looking at who is these under the radars that if they come in cash, it's going to leapfrog me up to that top contest. So that's kind of my thought on Royval. But to me, boom or bust play on him just because, type he is. By the way, did you know Alexandre Pantoja has a nickname?
Wait, what is it?
The Cannibal.
Oh,
so you got the Cannibal versus Raw Dog.
Battle of interesting nicknames for sure.
Could you imagine if you went into a sports bar tomorrow night that's showing the event and let's say you have 10 dudes sitting together, go, hey man, so this guy's about to fight, his nickname's Raw Dog. What's your definition of Raw Dog?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think the UFC, they don't care. They don't care.
I'm pretty sure Buffer does not say Raw Dog. I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
Buffer's a clown. Just say it, dude. You don't need
I literally
say whatever it is.
Yeah, there's some bad nicknames out there. I mean, there's some bad fire nicknames out there. Let's move over next up to our matchup. We got Shavkat Rakhmonov, the biggest betting favorite on this card, taking on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Shavkat is a minus 650 betting favorite, plus 450 for Stephen Thompson. Rakhmonov, 9,700 on DK, $23 on FanDuel. And for Wonderboy, he's 6,500 on DK and $8 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I love my boy, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, one of my favorite fighters in the world. It's a very dangerous fight. It's a very dangerous fight because he's not fighting a pure striker. The way that Wonderboy Thompson can have excellent showcases and excellent performances is when he's going up against a fighter who's only willing to stand up with him. And I feel like nobody's willing to stand up with Wonderboy because even when you are a kickboxer, you're looking to take him down. He's just so dynamic, and his footwork is excellent. His range is incredible. The dexterity with his legs is just second to none. He puts combinations, and he's a master of space. His footwork somewhat deflects and avoids a lot of takedown attempts. But if you do pin him against the cage, you can take him down, and that is clearly his Achilles heel. All the years of working with Chris Weidman and everything. I mean, he's just not a wrestler. He's just not a grappler. And some fighters level up and develop in those areas. He has solid initial takedown defense, but there's very low level skills as far as the grappling is considered. And I do think a guy in Shavkat Rakhmonov, he doesn't have to grapple. He has enough power to knock down Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's been knocked down plenty of times. It looked ugly early against Kevin Holland, and then all of a sudden Wonderboy Thompson just had one of the best performances of his career, and he's had plenty of them, and he just beat the heck out of Kevin Holland. I think that Shavkat Rakhmonov's he checks all the boxes, and the only way he loses this fight, in my opinion, is if he stays at range for 15 minutes and just gets outmaneuvered. I think the chances of that are below 20%. So I don't hate the absolute punt of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to win a decision. I don't think that he will or can knock out Shavkat Rakhmonov, even though we've seen Rakhmonov get rocked. I think that if that happens, you see Shavkat wrestle. And that's, I think, his easiest path to victory. He's a massive price point on the DraftKings slate. 9,700. I mean, you could pivot away from it, but it is a nice matchup against a very old fighter for the division. And I don't like the matchup for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, because I do think that at any given moment, Shavkat can wrestle and wrestle often and then look to ground and pound or submit Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And this could be a breakout performance, and he will get over and get some fans to really attract towards him with a win over a notable name in Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. So, I mean, obviously, my bias, I'm rooting for Wonderboy Thompson. I hope it stays at range and he picks him apart. I just don't think it does. I think there's two plays that are not free squares, but like, some of the best upside and best finishing potential on the slate. And it's two of the highest priced fighters, and that's Shavkat Rakhmonov and Paddy Pimblett.
When I look at this matchup and kind of, I guess, saying it maybe in a little bit a different way than what you said it, to me, is as long as Rakhmonov fights with a high fight IQ and doesn't fight with his ego, it's that John Jones mentality of, I want to beat you at what you do best. It'd be like me walking into a cage against you, Pete, and going, you know what? I'm going to take him down in a striking matchup. And saying, hey, I know that's what he does best, so I want to beat him at his game. And that's John Jones' mentality, and obviously it's worked great for him. But to me, Rakhmonov utilizing a full skill set here, utilizing those takedowns, I will say when I was looking at this, like, obviously the money line is a huge number. The DK line is a huge number at 9,700. I mean, if he's going to pay off that price point, I think it's got to be takedowns and a stoppage in the first or second round. And probably also that means we've got some upsets earlier on the card to where that price point's really going to help out. On the betting side, I like to talk about sprinkles. I think a little sprinkle on this one is Rakhmonov wins via decision, which I want to say it was like plus, I think it was over 2-1 odds when I looked last night.
I think like Rakhmonov's just so dangerous that he'll pick up another finish, and there's no reason for me to want to get away from the finishing potential, even though I know the Jeff Neal fight went late. And like even Neil Magny was in the second round, Michelle Prazeres was in the second round. I just think that if it gets on the ground, you will see him finish. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and there's some advice that Shavkat Rakhmonov can get from fellow training partners. I mean, Gilbert Burns, Vicente Luque have both fought Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and I bet you they're saying, don't strike with this guy. Take him down. Take him down immediately. Take him down immediately. Vicente Luque got smoked on the feet, and Gilbert Burns just kind of took him down, controlled him, and blanketed him for 15, which if Burns can't finish him on the ground, maybe that means, that Shavkat can't from a submission standpoint, but like we see Shavkat utilize ground and pound in a violent nature. So I really hate this fight for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I like the Michelle Pahea fight because it's two strikers. Pahea could grapple if he wanted to. That was a nice matchup stylistically, and I almost feel like this is kind of like a company payback in a way for not taking that fight for Pahea being 174 pounds instead of 170.
Yeah, this is one of those matchups. I feel like it's old school UFC matchmaking, and I do wonder if Thompson is unable to get the victory tomorrow night. Is this potentially the last time we see Stephen Wonderboy Thompson inside the UFC octagon? I can very well see that. And I'll say this. I think when you look at this welterweight division and you say who is the biggest threat to become champion in 2024, I think it's Rakhmonov.
Yeah, I think that Rakhmonov has so much hype behind him, has a massive fan base, and I think he's legit. His chin is somewhat of a question mark, just because we've seen him get rocked numerous times and rocked badly, but like as far as skills in every department, he's up there. He's one of the most well-rounded fighters for the division for sure, and like if, say, he fought, I don't know, Bilal Muhammad or something, I'd be very intrigued to see how that would go.
It wouldn't surprise me. Late summer, early fall, that UFC welterweight title fight is Bilal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov.
See, it's almost like we kind of like predicted it.
Because look, Bilal should get the winner of Saturday night's fight. He should. We know in MMA, should does not always matter. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, let's move over to the lightweight matchup between Paddy Pimblett and Tony Ferguson. Paddy Pimblett is a minus 310 betting favorite, 9,400 on DK, $22 on FanDuel. For Tony Ferguson, he is plus 250, 6,800 on DK, and $9 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I don't really like Tony Ferguson in this spot. I know that he's been training with David Goggins. Cool. Awesome. I think, cardio was never a worry about Tony Ferguson. Developing mental strength was never a worry about Tony Ferguson. This guy always bit down on the mouthpiece and dealt with adversity head on and always pushed a crazy pace and broke his opposition and elbowed the hell out of everybody, sliced them open. And, I like it when guys bring in skill builders. I just don't know, like, outside of just being in good shape, I don't know how this helps the skills that we're seeing somewhat deteriorate in the octagon. We're seeing poor takedown defense. We're seeing ground control. We're seeing him get submitted against guys that shouldn't be submitting him. Him getting rocked and dropped and knocked out, and like for a long time, that chin held up. So, I mean, like, I think what he should have done is just gone out there and worked on his grappling and wrestling extensively, worked on his movement, and worked on his defense, his striking defense. All things I'm sure he's worked on, right? Like, I don't know him. I'm not in his camp. But I almost feel like he could be just so aged and withered coming into this matchup where Paddy Pimblett looks like an absolute superstar and knocks him out, looks like a K1 kickboxer in there against Tony Ferguson, who's just so broken down from the hard training with David Goggins. Really do. And this is a fighter that I've been, low on. But I think that, timing's everything. And I think the timing couldn't be any better than Paddy Pimblett. The UFC knows what they're doing. And I think that the time's going to come when we're going to find, an opponent to expose Paddy Pimblett. I don't think it's Tony Ferguson. I don't mind going and sprinkling Tony Ferguson just because of the power in his hands and how Paddy Pimblett, leaves his head on the center line and his chin straight up in the air. But, like, at 6,800, he's just a punt play because I do think that at 9,400, we see Paddy Pimblett go out there and get a massive, massive victory.
I know there's obviously been a lot of talk about what Tony Ferguson has done. And I mean, look, and I have agree with Tony Ferguson's fight camps through the years because I've always felt that kind of he was the GM as opposed to someone else being the GM of his fight camp. But I actually don't mind his decision in terms of this one of trying to get his mental headspace in the right place because there's been a lot of things that have happened with Tony in and out of competition in terms of this one. I think him going to a super gym probably would not have been the best idea because there would have probably been a lot of young guys in that gym that were trying to, take advantage of the situation. But I do want to bring up this Michael Bisping quote from his YouTube channel. Paddy Pimblett's a great fighter. Make no mistake. He's faster on his feet. He's probably got better boxing if you look at skill for skill. But Paddy carries his chin kind of high in the air. I've seen better defense on power slap sometimes. I mean, damn. That's the one thing, and we've talked about, and look, Paddy hasn't fought in a year, who says he hasn't made a lot of changes in terms of his boxing defense, but that is always, to me, the big question mark with Paddy Pimblett is that chin is high as can be, and you're hearing these things that he wants to fight Bobby Green next. Don't do it, Paddy. Don't do it, Paddy, because Bobby Green, you tell me if he wins tomorrow night and they're booking him against Bobby Green, oh, I can't wait for a 6,800 Bobby Green. Cannot wait for it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Bobby Green fall from grace too. But I mean, it was against Jalen Turner. But I totally agree with the errors in his game. I mean, his chin's so high. I just don't get people that keep their chin high. As a coach, like, I just don't get it. Like, I yell at some of my fighters, and then it's like either they're stupid as hell, or you just think you're better, like, better than me. And it's like, you have to realize. So that's like when it happens in training, I crack them often. And that's the only way you're going to learn. And I wonder if these guys that keep their head up and their chin high in the sky, if they don't have those people willing to push because they don't want to be that guy to hurt their training partners or be that guy to destroy the confidence. Sometimes you need your confidence somewhat destroyed and beaten down in training. That's what's going to help you develop. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure he's gotten dropped. I'm sure they've had plenty of talks about it, but like, there needs to be like, dude, like, put a tennis ball underneath your chin if you need to, shadow box, do 3 rounds a day, get that chin down, because like, I don't know. It's just frustrating for me. And there's plenty of people that just, I don't know why they cannot make that adjustment.
Well, for Tony Ferguson, a loss would allow him to join BJ Penn in a category you don't want to be in.
That's so bad. What is it? 7 losses in a row?
the only fighters in UFC history to lose 7 fights in a row.
Is it really 7 in a row?
Yeah.
That is so bad.
BJ lost 7 in a row. Sam Alvey would have the record, but he had a draw. Sam Alvey ended 0-8-1 in his UFC run.
Let me just tell you, like, it's crazy how you can see these guys conquer the sport, get to the top of it, and then just be unwilling to kind of just like develop and learn new skills and take different approaches. You have to be willing to adjust. It's almost like I don't know, if football, if like you don't start adjusting your play calling style to the new age. You know what I mean? Like you have to just, mold with the times in a way. And I almost feel like pride gets in the way. And Tony Ferguson definitely has way too much pride because of just how you see it from his coaching staff decisions, him creating his own camps, and he's just an odd duck. He just really is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to kind of see how he comes out. Does he try to push a high pace against Paddy Pimblett and try to force Paddy to be the aggressor? But I will say this, like, I'll have a sprinkle on Tony Ferguson just in case he is able to pull this off. But I do feel like this is old school UFC matchmaking. You got the guy who's clearly on his way out the door. You got the young up-and-coming guy, even though he's got deficiencies in his game, that they want to elevate him up. Next up, we got Bryce Mitchell taking on Josh Emmett. Of course, this is a matchup that was put together 10 days ago with Giga Chikadze pulled out of this matchup with a injury. Josh Emmett is the betting underdog here, plus 186, minus 225 for Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell's $8,900 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. And for Josh Emmett, he is $7,312 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, initially when I saw this, I was talking to my brother-in-law, and like, man, I don't like this matchup for Bryce Mitchell, especially on short notice, going up against a guy who's had a wrestling background and has way better striking than Bryce Mitchell. And then I start thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, when Jalen Turner and Bobby Green were booked on short notice, you saw Jalen Turner step in on short notice and be a massive favorite. Same kind of thing for Bryce Mitchell against Josh Emmett. And I'm like, all right, well, what am I not seeing? What I'm not seeing is just the stylistic switch up from going for a camp against a striker in Giga Chikadze, where you're so super focused on fighting a high-level kickboxer, to now going up against a guy who is kind of like the Colby Covington for the division, but has such sneaky submission skills as well. And, you can defend takedowns. Josh Emmett will defend some takedowns. But, like, if he gets taken down, that's where I do think the jiu-jitsu edge is vastly superior for Bryce Mitchell. I think the initial wrestling will be somewhat close, but just the pace, as long as Bryce Mitchell's in shape, the pace and just the jiu-jitsu skills that I've seen, just significantly outweigh anything Josh Emmett has in the grappling department. So yeah, like, it took me a little bit to kind of just come to it. But I think, like, I actually think that Bryce Mitchell's going to do it. I think, initially I was going to get to a ton of Josh Emmett. You telling me a guy's an underdog with power in his hands, comes from a wrestling background, fought better competition to this point, and very proven at 7,300. Are you kidding me? And then the more I started thinking about it, I'm like, but he might not have a chance to get off. He might not have a chance to throw those hands because Bryce Mitchell's going to clinch and engage with him immediately. And then you had a whole camp tailored around a kickboxer. I actually think it's much easier for Mitchell to go in there against a power-handed striker with a wrestling background similar to Dan Ige than it is for Josh Emmett to pivot from a Giga Chikadze to Bryce Mitchell.
One of the things about Emmett, his takedown defense has not been great, 46%. And, I mean, he is coming off a massive beating against Ilia Topuria. And you talk about just a drastic change in styles when you go from Chikadze over to Bryce Mitchell. And to me, my general thought process of this is I think there's two fighters who are both favorites that you have to look at when we're talking about GPP contests as leverage plays. And Bryce Mitchell is one of them. The other one is Cody Garbrandt. We'll get into Cody here in a little bit, but like you look at that potential of Bryce Mitchell, and Josh Emmett has talked about the end is coming. He knows, he's not going to get back in title contention, so the end is coming, and he's admitted the end is coming here. So, like, to me, Bryce Mitchell is one of those guys that, as a leverage play, a high salary leverage play, he's a guy that I'm going to look forward to. And look, you have to imagine the Bryce Mitchell camp. Their mindset is, we're not trying to have a boxing matchup against Josh Emmett. We know what Josh Emmett can do. I think they'll try to get this one to the ground. I do like Bryce Mitchell to go out there and get the victory. Next up, it'll be the feature preliminary matchup between Jacoby and Alonzo Menifield. Jacoby is a minus 275 betting favorite, plus 225 for Menifield. Jacoby, 9,100 on DK, $20 on FanDuel. And for Menifield, he's 7,100 on DK and $10 on FanDuel. Beat.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of broke this fight down earlier. You got a high-level kickboxer in Dustin Jacoby going up against atomic Alonzo Menifield, who just has significant power for the division. Less skills as far as just like checking boxes from a striking standpoint, but everything's so powerful, and he's just a naturally powerful guy. Whereas Dustin Jacoby is so volume-oriented and, just picks his opponents apart. He could clearly pick Alonzo Menifield apart for 15 minutes. He could even knock out Alonzo Menifield. We did see Alonzo Menifield run into a strike and get knocked out against OSP in the second round, but that was back in 2020. Since then, fights over Fabio Cherant, Ed Herman, Askar Mojarov, Misha Serkinov, and Jimmy Crute. We've seen him develop under the lights. He needs to be met with physicality. And I just don't know if Jacoby can meet him with physicality to somewhat stifle the offense of Alonzo Menifield. And, Menifield can even land takedowns too. That's a wrinkle in the game where I think people are somewhat, overlooking. But Dustin Jacoby at range, I'm going to pick Dustin Jacoby to beat almost anybody at range for the division. He's so good and is such an amazing kickboxer in the sport of MMA. And since his crossover, he's just, his return back to MMA, I should say, he's just been on a tear. I think that this is a very, very close fight. The value clearly, lies with Alonzo Menifield, as Jason's mentioned. We've seen Dustin Jacoby get knocked down in the past. Maxim Grisha knocked him down twice in a 15-minute fight. Azamat Murzakanov knocked him down. Alonzo Menifield can knock him down. But it's what comes first. Does the power land? Or does the volume, the calf kicks, the range, the outside attacks, the straight shots, does that lead to a Dustin Jacoby decision? 15 minutes is a long time not to get hit with a big bomb. And like Jacoby can knock out Menifield, but I could say the same thing for Menifield over Jacoby. So I'm really torn. And in these situations, I will say that there is a slight gap between the overall striking, and it's going to make me lean towards Jacoby for a decision.
Jacoby, no doubt about it, Pete, is a better striker. No one's going to argue that. I mean, my general thought process is in this matchup is when I'm trying to find, that 75, 7,600 and below fighters, like who are those fighters that have 100-point ceilings? And to me, Menifield is one of those guys that you just kind of, I think and obviously we'll make our straight fight picks later on. And I am going to pick Dustin Jacoby just because I think Dustin Jacoby is a better striker than Alonzo Menifield, but understanding it from a DFS perspective of looking for someone who has that chance to go out and finish a fight. That's why I think Menifield, if you're looking for that punt play, to me, he's one of those punt plays to potentially look at there. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Irene Aldana taking on Karol Rosa. Irene Aldana minus 185 betting favorite. Plus 155 for Karol Rosa. Rosa 7,400 DK. $13 on FanDuel. Aldana 8,800 on DK. $16 on FanDuel. And she's another fighter. If you're looking for a little bit of a leverage play, she's a potential leverage play here, Pete.
Yeah, I'm not really in love with Aldana here. I think that she should win this fight because she's the rangier fighter. And I do think that she has the better boxing. But she's 5'9" versus Rosa's 5'5", 68-inch reach versus 67-inch reach. Aldana needs to utilize her reach, slight reach advantage, but her jab's excellent. Coming from a boxing background, her jab is excellent. Her straight right hand is powerful. We've seen her get finishes in the division, not really known for finishes. I think she's interesting for sure. I really like going back to the well for UFC challengers, title challengers, when they're going up against anybody else besides the champion. So, Aldana probably learned a lot in that fight against Amanda Nunes. I don't really know what Aldana that was because she looked terrible against Amanda Nunes, but Amanda's done that to so many people, so I don't really want to put too much weight in that performance, but she looked awful. She was just taken down, beaten up, out-volumed like crazy. Just seemed to kind of be like a deer in headlights. That's how she loses this fight to Karol Rosa, right? Like, she loses the fight by just sitting back and not throwing enough. We've seen Karol Rosa eclipse 100 landed significant strikes numerous times. And like Aldana, she may be the more precise, she may land the better, but she will get out-volumed, and her striking differential sits at, an unimpressive rate. So like we've seen Rosa land 171, 120, 125. I think that Aldana, and that's why like this week I'm struggling with a lot of underdogs because I feel like the favorites should win the fight. Granted, that's because they're set as favorites, but like a lot of times I could poke holes in the favorites and back the underdog significantly. This is a value play, and it's women's MMA, so I understand why ownership will flock to Karol Rosa. She's dangerous. She trains with Nisi Gomes as well as a relationship, but like I don't know, man. Outside of the high volume, I think that the jab should be significant for Irene Aldana, the long rangey strikes, and she should do enough in a fight against a normal fighter not named Amanda Nunes. So I'm still picking Irene Aldana to win, but like Karol Rosa is going to be one of my most heavily exposed underdogs. Same with Colby Covington and same with Alonzo Menifield and one other fighter we're going to get to.
Yeah, and like one of the commenters mentioned, Aldana did not look good. They brought out the box to make weight there, so that's something. And I think Karol Rosa has been one of those fighters I think people have been pointing at all week long as if you're looking to play an underdog play, that maybe she's one there. Next up, we got Brian Kelleher taking on Cody Garbrandt. Garbrandt minus 185 betting fair, plus 155 for Kelleher. Kelleher is 7,200 on DK, $11 on FanDuel, and for Cody, he's 9,000 on DK, $19 over on FanDuel. And to me, this is I'm circling this fight, Pete. I'm just saying I'm circling this fight for GPPs.
Yeah, I'm circling it as well. I mean, like, this is another situation where it's like you have a guy, just like Dustin Jacoby, who's better in a lot of the areas than his opponent. Cody Garbrandt's better than Brian Kelleher in a lot of the areas, but, like, I mean, I just can't trust Cody Garbrandt, like, especially when you put money attached to it. So if say I absolutely had to, I'm probably going to pick his opponents just because I've had a really tough time backing Cody Garbrandt because he's burned me so many times. He got hurt numerous times in a Rob Font fight and somehow survived. Wrestled a lot in that bout. I think, any time that he's willing to stand and trade, his fight IQ comes into question because he just starts to swing and bang. I think that he has so many flaws in his defense by leaving his chin up, hands low. I think Brian Kelleher is an excellent underdog here, and because he's an excellent underdog with finishing potential, he's going to be one of the guys I get to a lot. I mean, like, I think at 7,200, there's enough holes in Cody Garbrandt's game for me to, say, yeah, that's a good underdog to target. Just like Alonzo Menifield, just like Karol Rosa, and just like, Colby Covington. Like that's kind of like my underdog pool this week. Those four. I do think though, like there is a small percentage where Cody Garbrandt goes out there, stays on the outside, throws his shots, mixes in the wrestling enough to just dominate Brian Kelleher, who's guillotine happy. Could he land a guillotine and choke out Cody Garbrandt? Absolutely. I think the finishing potential is more on Kelleher's side than Cody Garbrandt, which is kind of crazy to say because when Cody broke onto the scene, he was finishing and knocking out everybody. I do think that Cody Garbrandt can win a very decisive decision by utilizing his wrestling and just putting on, tons of pace and speed over Kelleher. But, like, I got to pick an underdog, and I am going to pick an underdog here and say that Brian Kelleher, despite coming off of crazy neck surgery, which I do not like hearing at all. Cody Garbrandt's been banged up and hurt a lot as well, getting a lot of work done. So I'm going to go with Brian Kelleher to pull off the upset. But this is another fight where I understand if you're on the Cody Garbrandt side. This is a week. It's very tough for me to kind of make a stand. I'm not making a stand here, but I am going to – there's enough value on Kelleher for me to say, yeah, I'll take him.
All right, so skill for skill, Cody Garbrandt's the better fighter. But I am totally with you. So much questions about that chin and whether or not it can hold off. But to me, looking at where ownership is at right now, Cody Garbrandt is a guy I've got circled just because I'm like, man, for some reason, I think Cody's going to walk away with the finish tomorrow night. And so that's where I'm looking at it. And I just, the concerns I have on the Cody Garbrandt side is twofold. It's A, that chin, and B, him going for a takedown and potentially getting caught in a guillotine by Brian Kelleher. We've seen Kelleher do that throughout his MMA run. It's a go-to move for him. But to me, I really like Cody Garbrandt in this spot, but buyer beware. I think you just got to put buyer beware. If he's going to lose it, to me, it's either he gets chin checked or he gets submitted via a guillotine. Next up, we got another female matchup. Casey O'Neill taking on Ariane Lipski. O'Neill is a minus 190 betting favorite, plus 160 for Lipski. Lipski is 7,500 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. And for Casey O'Neill, she's A700 on DK and $16 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, Lipski's a fighter that kind of turned a corner in her career. Started to work a lot with Amanda Nunes out of that private camp. Not really seeing anything on social media saying that she's back there. It kind of seems like she's moved her camp back to Brazil or something like that. I liked her under the tutelage of Amanda Nunes. I truthfully did, because that's a fighter that can beat the hell out of you in training to get you ready, but also give her the best advice in the game. But yeah, so I think personally that Ariane Lipski is, she's a live dog for sure. She looked good against J.J. Aldrich and Melissa Gatto, but like those are two fighters. Like J.J. Aldrich has really, really fallen down the ladder for me, in my personal opinion. Melissa Gatto, not really that impressive. But like Casey O'Neill is a fighter that I circled when she broke onto the scene. I said, damn, like I like what she does. Throws high volume, gets takedowns, super aggressive on the mat, tons of ground and pound, finishing potential galore. It's just the fight IQ. Like there was no need to stand and trade with Jennifer Maia. I think the worry about Maia's jiu-jitsu was in the back of her head. She only attempted one takedown in that fight. She's gotten healthy since then. She's taken some time away. That was back in March. She's out of a great camp, out of Extreme Couture. I'm seeing her wrestle and grapple often, as she should. But yeah, so I like Casey O'Neill here. Do I like the fact that she had a split decision against Roxanne Modafferi? No, but I think Roxanne's underappreciated in the jiu-jitsu realm, and she's made tough fights out of a lot of her fights. So I think it was a good, fight to mature in, and I just think that Casey O'Neill has the higher ceiling of the two. You could see Ariane Lipski put together a nice performance dancing on the outside, putting together good combinations, defending some initial takedowns, and keeping it upright for the large majority. But there's enough upside in Casey O'Neill's game, and I'm really just impressed from the fight footage, everything I've seen outside of the fight IQ, that I'm going to take Casey O'Neill here, and I think that she's at a pretty generous price tag, and it's 8,700 given her work rate and her ceiling. I think that she's going to be very, very popular.
Yeah. I mean, Casey O'Neill, I think I was looking at her PrizePicks, that 1.5 takedown prop kind of does stick out to me a little bit. We've seen Lipski do a much better job with that, but I do like O'Neill in this one. Next up, we got Ulanbekov taking on Durden. Ulanbekov is a minus 175 betting favorite, plus 145 for Durden. Tagir is A300 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. Durden, 7,900 on DK, and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, Cody Durden's a guy I just can't get right. He is a great underdog in almost all of his fights because of his wrestling pedigree. This is a guy that'll go out there and attempt a crazy amount of takedowns. And in addition to attempting, he will land a crazy amount of takedowns. He landed 11 takedowns against Charles Johnson. He went up 11 of 18 in that bout. Landed 4 takedowns, 4 of 6 against Jake Hadley. He has good control time as well. The issue with Cody Durden, he's on a 4-fight win streak right now, which is really impressive for the division, and moved his camp full-time to Coconut Creek American Top Team. Even if it's not full-time, I believe it is, but he's down there a lot more than he used to at the satellite gym in Atlanta. So I think that Cody Durden's live as always. The issue is that Tagir Ulanbekov comes from a very strong camp of wrestlers as well. I mean, out of Habib Nurmagomedov MMA, like those guys are just crazy with their wrestling skills. And in addition to Tagir's wrestling, he does something that Cody Durden struggles at, and that's defending the neck. Tagir hunts the neck so well with guillotine chokes like crazy. I think until the end of time, I'm going to be betting on Cody Durden to lose via submission because I think he's too tough to quit via strikes. I think the chin is pretty strong. We've seen him do well in striking matchups in the past, even in the kickboxing regional scene. But yeah, I think the way to beat Cody Durden is pretty simple. You have to defend the takedowns, which is hard, but threaten the neck. And he may not be the first one that gets you. I was betting on Jake Hadley to win via submission because I thought that Hadley was going to do it. But again, British wrestling, and it showed that Cody Durden's just so good in the top position that he can neutralize his opponents. I'm not convinced that he's going to be on top of Tagir Ulanbekov. I like Ulanbekov here at 8,300. I like the guillotine. I like just what happens if Tagir takes down Cody Durden. He has that wrestling potential to do that. He is the better striker. And I think the immature Tagir Ulanbekov in years past is gone. I think I was poking holes at his game, but he still picked up victories over Bruno Silva and Alan Nascimento, two big names that I really like. Nate Maness, can't stand that guy. But yeah, it's I'm backing Tagir Ulanbekov here at 8,300. I think that he does it.
You're the president of Nate Maness fan club. I mean, the one thing is we have seen. I mean, the one is the inactivity of Tagir. Hasn't fought in over a year. We have seen in 2 of his 4 fights has been taken down multiple times. Taken down 3 times by Tim Elliott, which of course was a unanimous decision loss. Also taken down 4 times by Bruno Silva. I mean, look, the one knock on Cody Durden for a long time really was about that cardio. But you've seen since he's gone down to Coconut Creek, he seems to have fixed that hole in his game. I mean, if you're looking for an underdog, I don't mind Cody Durden, but obviously he's going to have to use his wrestling and get this matchup to the ground. If you tell me this thing's on the feet, I think this is Tagir's fight to lose totally all the way. But also I understand that.
Also, just real quick to note is that, American Top Team, those guys are amazing at jiu-jitsu. So, Cody Durden is getting put in guillotines on the regular down there. So, he could be, rounding out that weakness, a part of his game. I still like Tagir Ulanbekov, and we're on the same page with that fight.
Next up, we got Andre Fili taking on Lucas Almeida. Fili is a -175 betting favorite, +145 for Almeida. Fili, 8,500 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. And for Almeida, he is 7,700 on DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
I mean, I'm one of the biggest backers of Andre Fili within his career. I do not want him to lose this fight against Lucas Almeida. I want him to go out there and have a breakthrough performance because I just think it's possible. Lucas Almeida is a guy, again, this is a favorite who should win, but his opponent is live because we've seen just concerns about the favorite. Andre Fili sometimes will get chin checked and rocked and hurt, and that's what Lucas Almeida can do. Andre Fili is so skilled in every department. His striking's excellent. His wrestling's excellent. His fight IQ sometimes goes out the window because he just enjoys fighting so much. But I just think that he's so damn good. Outside of the potential of just getting flatlined and getting knocked out, I think that he just styles on this guy, Lucas Almeida. I really do. I think that he's at one of the best price points on the slate. But on the flip side, at 8,500, that's an excellent price point. But on the flip side, at 7,700, that's a live dog. We've seen Lucas Almeida get destroyed and then come back. Outside of just Pat Sabatini destroying him, and this is a guy who beat Michael Trezano in round 3. Had a 15-minute war against Daniel Zellhuber. This is a crazy fight to target, and one way or another, I'm expecting it to be fireworks. I'm backing Andre Fili. He had a war with Nathaniel Wood, who I think is significantly better than Lucas Almeida everywhere. Both of them were knocked down in that bout, but I'm backing Andre Fili. But sometimes he fights at the level of his competition instead of going out there and styling. And maybe he's a constant guy I overrate. But I guess I'm going to do it again. 8,500 Andre Fili.
Yeah, I'm on Feely on this one as well. And yeah, I do like the price point there as well. It could be a little bit of a nice little play there. And then our opening matchup, we got Martin Boudet taking on Shamil Gazov. Gazov plus 110, minus 130 for Boudet. Boudet, 8,400 on DK, $15 on FanDuel for Shamil. He's 7,800 on DK and $14 on FanDuel, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, like Shamil's a Dagestani wrestler for the division. It's super dangerous. He's so live for a round, maybe a round and a half, as you and I talked about pre-show. I think that his wrestling and his top game and his ground and pound is ferocious. Can he get Martin Boudet there? I think Martin Boudet is just very well-rounded and UFC tested. I like getting behind these guys that have UFC wins. Like, it seems so silly, but just being under the UFC banner, under the UFC lights, and proving that you can pick up wins, I'd almost, be willing to just always back these veterans against these UFC debut fighters, because there's a lot that goes into it, and you already know they've proven it to you. And I feel like the large majority are going to come through for us. Is Martin Boudet the best fighter? No. I think that he's pretty solid for the division. He's tough. He likes to pin his opponents against the cage. I think this could be a lot of, octagon control split between the both, because they just keep reversing position. It could be a hug fest. It could be a very, very ugly heavyweight fight. I'm not convinced the finish happens. Martin Boudet's been in some stinkers in the past, and I'm kind of expecting the same. Shamil has all the wrestling potential in the world, but like I think that Martin Boudet is going to pick up a decision win here, and it's a fight that I'm kind of just okay getting away from. Initially I was so interested in the underdog because of his wrestling potential, and I'm like, hold on, am I jumping the gun? Because I just don't know. I don't think like he's going to be able to do what he does to most people in the UFC against Martin Boudet.
Yeah, I like Martin Boudet in this spot as well. It wouldn't surprise me if maybe he can get a third-round finish with Shamil maybe wearing out there. Something to kind of pay attention to there, but I just don't see myself really getting into this, even though ownership is somewhat low here. Let's talk into our straight-up fight picks here. Main event, I will go underdog number 1 in Colby Covington.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to go Leon Edwards.
I will go Pantoja in the co-main.
Pantoja.
Rakhmonov. Paddy
Pimblett.
Give me Bryce
Mitchell.
Jacoby.
Jacoby.
Give me underdog number 2 in Karol Rosa.
Oh man, I'm gonna still say Aldana.
Go Garbrandt.
I'm gonna go Kelleher.
O'Neal. Underdog number 3, Cody Durden.
Interesting. I'm going to go Ulanbekov.
I'll go Feely.
And
Boudet. Prize picks, there's only 3 prize picks that I'm really on. Less than 98.5 fantasy score on Leon Edwards. Under 10.5 fight time minutes on Pantoja. And more than 9 3/4 fight time minute on Rakhmonov.
Interesting. I like it.
I mean, I think it's a lot of good numbers out there. I mean, other ones that I would potentially, look at over there is the over 37.5 significant strikes on Bryce Mitchell. Jacoby, 11.5 fight time minutes. I could really go either way on that one. I could see that being a 15-minute fight, but also I could see someone getting knocked out in the first round. I would say the under 12.5 fight time minutes on Cody Garbrandt, even though has a recipe to go over. Over 1.5 takedowns for O'Neal. I would say the under 1.5 takedowns on Ulanbekov. I think he tried to keep that one on the feet. I don't think he goes into the wrestling world in terms of that one. I'd probably say more than the 11.5 fight time minutes. So those are just kind of leans, not really plays I really love over there on PrizePicks. Let's get some questions that came in over on our Discord channel. It's always a great way to put there. Tristan coming in with his usual questions, the best leverage plays, best takedown upside, and ranking the 9K options. Best leverage play to me, I think you have to look at Cody Garbrandt and Bryce Mitchell as your leverage plays in terms of high salary favored fighters.
Yeah, that's a good point.
In terms of takedown upside, in terms of this one, I think you got like Covington, Pantoja, Rakhmonov, Mitchell, Durden, O'Neal.
I agree.
Ranking the 9K fighters here. So our 9K fighters, we got Rakhmonov at 9,700, Paddy at 9,400, Jacoby at 9,100, and Garbrandt at 9,000. I think you have to put Rakhmonov number one, even though the price point's high and he's going to score a ton of points to be optimal. But to me, he would probably be my number one. Number two, good Lord, 2, 3, 4. I could have these in any order, Pete.
I have it the same way DraftKings has it. Shavkat, Paddy, Jacoby, Cody.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, but to me, 2 through 4 could go any of 3 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
There's not really one that I would say I have a huge thought process on there. I want to make sure value plays underneath 8K on DraftKings.
Under 8K. Well, we kind of laid out a lot of the underdogs that we like. Durden's always live. Almeida's live against the guy who could just be constantly overrated. Royval in the co-main. Karol Rosa because of the volume. Kelleher because of the question marks. Menifield. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of underdogs that really could come through. So, it seems crazy to me, but I'm going to lean with the favorites, but I'm going to have to sprinkle my ownership. And I almost feel like, obviously, you have to get the underdogs right? Like that's essential. But I almost feel like it's get the favorites right this week. Like you have to find who's going to score the most out of these favorites. And that to me is always the trouble situation. And then mix and match the underdogs.
I would throw a sprinkle on Josh Emmett as well. If he can keep that thing on the feet. I mean, we know the power that he has. There is right hands. And of course, even though I do like Mitchell stepped up here on short notice. Core 3 plays on DraftKings. I
wish it could just go Paddy and Shavkat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean you
it's
could.
Just, it's such huge. I mean, I kind of, you know what? I might say Pantoja just because of the takedown upside and finishing the fight in the first 2 rounds. I mean, I would probably start there. The other 2 core plays for me, you're going to call me crazy, Cody Garbrandt. I got a feeling that Cody, that he pulls this one off here. And I think
he knocks him out?
Yeah, I think he plays. I don't
he knocks out Kelleher?
I don't think Cody plays the ground game in this one. I think he's going to try to. I could see the thought process of, if I can style on this guy, this gets me the big fight I'm looking for. I'm not huge on Brian Kelleher either. I'm just not big on Brian Kelleher.
I'm not either. That's the thing. It's like a lot of these fighters I'm not big on, but it's
I mean, if I was going to say a third core play,
I don't know if I say that core. I like.
I'd probably go Colby Covington just because of the takedown upside and the price point.
Yeah.
Let's see here. FanDuel cheapies. Brand Royval at $12 definitely is one that sticks out to me as a cheapie. Menifield, obviously huge upside at $10. Kelleher $11 just because of, if you say Garbrandt does go for a takedown and he can try to catch him in a guillotine, that one sticks out to me. I don't mind Andre Feely at $15. Not necessarily a cheapie, but those are kind of the cheapies that score fan. Apparently, FanDuel's man, good Lord, I don't play at FanDuel anymore. I'm just being honest. Their top contest, 3,000 to first place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Someone put it over our Discord, and yeah, I mean you're spot on. I mean it's really tough to. Those contests just really don't get to you. I mean they just don't get to you.
No.
We'll go over Shine X. We gave our thoughts on Colby Covington's comment earlier on the show, so you can check out that. Don't want to necessarily sit here and repeat that. Sam, I have no idea what you say. Please trust the OnlyFans. Fade this card.
Who's got OnlyFans?
Well, we have what, two female fights?
Who's got it? Oh, Lipski. She's got it.
Oh, she does. Oh, okay.
I don't know. She should. But
no clue. Look, I'll say this. I do know that OnlyFans is actually paying a lot of those female fighters to be on the platform. I've heard that one.
I know guys that have an OnlyFans freaking sponsorship. So like,
hey, dude, watch regional MMA. A lot of regional MMA. As an OnlyFans sponsor.
According to her Instagram bio, she does have an OnlyFans.
Oh, okay. I remember Sam has mentioned that before, but
I want to know his numbers on it. He might be.
I don't know. Man, I don't know if I want to go with that. Well, I mean, what's your
logic behind it?
Yeah. God, what was it?
Well, okay.
The girl who fought.
Right, hold on. We're down the rabbit hole a little bit right now. I gotta say it because I just clicked on her opposition. Okay, little weird. Okay, Ariane Lipski has an OnlyFans, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you guys ready for this? Went to Casey O'Neal's Instagram. She has a link thing, so I clicked on the link. She's got all this stuff: merch, Twitter, Instagram, feet pics. PayPal me.
Oh my God.
What are we doing here? So who we faded? Feet girl or OnlyFans girl? Come on, guys. Sam, how do you notice? Stop. So maybe we're fading the fight because I don't know.
Oh man. Well, you remember, I don't know if you the girl who fought a couple weeks ago, Perez. She was on
Aileen Perez. Yes.
Yeah, she went on Ariel's show like the next week, and she said she made more money on OnlyFans after the fight than she actually made in the fight.
It's pathetic, right? It is pathetic. It's sad.
Dude,
it's very sad.
It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for the podcast. I'll try to hop in that Discord tomorrow. I'm flying out a little earlier than normal because we've got some bad weather coming into the Tampa Bay area. So be up in chilly Green Bay tomorrow night.
I was going to ask you, who are you guys playing? You guys playing Green Bay?
Yeah, we're in Green Bay on Sunday. So yeah, it's for a relatively warm Green Bay this time of year, lows in the 30s, highs in the 40s. So I'll take that as a Florida boy going up to the north.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I'll try to hop in that Discord. If there's any movements on some PrizePicks plays, I'll throw that in there. Also, I'll be diving into the props tonight and see maybe which props I may want to throw a little sprinkle on. Thank you for the Tampa Bay Lightning last night. That plus 525 money line in the third period.
Lightning? Really?
Yeah, I was. They were losing 3-2, and I was like, let me just sprinkle over that Hard Rock app. Let's see what that live odd is. I saw money line plus 525. I'll go, I'm throwing a sprinkle. They ended up winning 7-4.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's it. I mean, and look, live betting is definitely the way to go in terms of mixed martial arts. So we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the podcast. Of course, we'll be back beginning of next year. That'll be our next MMA UFC event. Of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the podcast. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, rate, review, subscribe, all those things. We do appreciate that. So we will talk to you next time right here on the Fight HQ podcast.